What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. Excited for this one. We've got a great guest on today that's full of knowledge and a lot of experience and stories, and so it should be a good episode. Just excited to have him on here. Thank y'all again for tuning in, and I'm not going to do too much of the pre-show rambling today. We're just going to get right to it. I'm going to introduce my guest here, Mr. Tom Rowland. What's going on, man?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, doing good. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Jeff for reaching out to you and getting you to come on the podcast, and we're stoked to have you on here and pick your brain a little bit about what's going on down there in Florida.
For sure.
So
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Are you doing much fishing this time of year?
Yeah. Right now we're kind of not filming, but this is traditionally a very good time of the year to fish.
Yeah.
February's probably my favorite month of the year. And some Februaries we can get, 25 awesome days.
Yeah.
And other Februaries we get 5 awesome days.
Right.
So it depends on the year, but this is the time of the year where the tarpon really show up. In my opinion, it's the best month of tarpon fishing if the weather cooperates, and the permit fishing's real good, bone fishing's good. I mean, everything's good because the water has kind of bottomed out. As far as the annual temperature has kind of bottomed
Gotcha.
out. And so we're on kind of a rise now. We're on a rising temperature. Of course, you can have peaks and valleys as it's rising. We can have a really bad cold front this month or even next month. But typically the water temperature is rising, and the fish like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I've tried to time it out. I've had a couple decent trips in February down there to fish, and I feel like usually when I come I bring the cold weather from North Carolina down there with me.
Now February's a month that it's like a locals month almost. It's like if you live there, you're going to get some good fishing. You don't know exactly how much, but it's going to be pretty good. And if you plan it, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you hit it right, it's the best month in my opinion.
Definitely. I used to be more flexible before I had a wife and kids and whatnot, but it makes it a little tougher to just slip away when the weather's good nowadays. So where exactly in Florida are you located, or where's kind of your home base?
Well, I got it out of Key West for a long time, and then we do the show out of Hawks Cay.
Right.
And so that's kind of the home base,
Cool.
Islamorada, Hawks Cay.
Awesome. Well, that's super cool. I've been seeing some tarpon pictures kind of sliding onto Instagram and stuff lately, and it's got me wanting to do some fishing. It's I gotta wait a little bit longer before they get up here to North Carolina. Unfortunately, they're not here in the winter by any means. If they are, they're dead.
Yeah.
So
well,
cool. Well, kind of tell people. I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with you, but kind of give your backstory, how you got into fishing, and kind of how it's brought you to where you are today through guiding and through the TV show and everything.
Sure. Somewhere in college, I got the itch to go out west, and that led to a job in Yellowstone National Park. And when I went there, I saw things that I had never seen before. I saw clear water and trout, and I grew up in Tennessee, and most of my fishing was largemouth bass and bluegill, and I had never really seen fish in the water like that, with that super clear water, and that was it, man. That's all I needed to see. I knew that's what I was going to do in some way, shape, or form for the rest of my life. I was hooked.
Yeah.
The next year I went to a guide school in Jackson, Wyoming, run by Joe Bressler, and I was lucky enough to get hired right out of that school and get a job in Jackson, Wyoming. We were fishing the South Fork of the Snake River for the most part. That was a really good time for that river. It was fantastic fishing, and learned how to guide from some real pros. Joe was a very good guide himself. His dad was Vern Bressler. He started the Orvis Endorsed Guide program, and just a real hard ass actually.
Yeah.
He didn't tolerate anything but excellence, and it was a really good. It was a hard way to learn because he didn't tolerate anything but excellence. So you got chewed out quite a bit, but you understood, after a while. And Vern was a good coach. He was awesome. So I did that for, 7 years, I guess. And somewhere in the middle of that, I decided I wanted to try to fish year round. And the guides out west get more days than we did back then. We got 90 to 100 days.
Wow.
And then, there's a lot of things that are different now. Like there's a lot more homeschooling. There's a lot of people that can travel and work from anywhere. Of course, the internet, we didn't have the internet.
Right.
So there's a lot more flexibility. And we saw that about September 5th, there were no more tourists. It was just over.
Yeah.
So September was kind of our month to fish. October, you'd fish a little bit in there. November, it starts to get a little cold. But the guides out there now get a lot more days. So I don't know if I would have made the same decision. Maybe I thought I could have made it out there, with that kind of schedule. But about September 5th, we were done, and we didn't really start until July 4th. And so there really not a lot of days. And I was working for another outfitter. So I thought I was going to be a trout fishing guide. Looked at, what were the possibilities in Argentina, Chile, kind of outside of the country, and didn't really have very many good opportunities, or didn't know how to find any back then. And there was an opportunity for Jackson Hole trout guides to go to Little Cayman and guide on the island of Little Cayman, because the person that owned the newspaper in Jackson also owned a lodge on Little Cayman. And Little Cayman was a tiny little island. I mean, it still is a tiny little island, but it only had about 18 people living on it. It had this one little lodge on it, and that was it. And there were some bonefish there, some permit, and there was an interior pond where there were some little tarpon. So I mean, there were some good targets, but it was very limited.
Yeah.
And I left there with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and we weren't totally sold on Little Cayman. Like, okay, well, that is an opportunity. Is that our best opportunity? And we went through Key West, and I went to see my friend Simon Becker, and Key West is awesome. Key West is fantastic. We weren't there for 30 minutes before we started thinking, well, what's wrong with this place? Then we went fishing with Simon, and we went out to the Marquesas and saw that, and I was like, man, this place blows the doors off of Little Cayman. Like, why did nobody suggest this? And nobody did suggest it, because that's just wasn't really a thing that many people were doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I with the help of Simon and Michael Pollock, went down there and got my captain's license and spent a year learning the water, and then started guiding in Key West. And for a while went from Key West to Jackson, Wyoming, and in the wintertime I'd be in Key West, and in the summertime I'd be in Jackson. And then once I got married, it was all Key West, and that's where I've made my career.
That's
and
cool.
From that, I got into fishing the tournaments, and the tournaments led to the television show, and the show is called Saltwater Experience. It's been on the air this is our 17th year being on the air, and we started a couple other shows. My partner Rich Tudor and I, we started another show called Into the Blue with two other hosts, and then we started a bass show called Sweetwater, and then today we also have Waypoint TV, which is a digital network for hunting and fishing, which is on all kinds of stuff like Samsung Plus, the connected TV space, pretty much everything but conventional television.
Yeah. I feel like that's where everything's moving to now, really.
It seems like it. I hope so.
Yeah.
That we are a little bit ahead of the trend, but that's what it seemed like, because I mean, every year for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been going to renew the contracts with the sponsors, and the first question is, well, 500,000 people cut the cable. What are you going to do about that? Your ratings went down, and this is the answer. For a while, we had no answer.
Right.
And Waypoint seems to be an answer that seems to be where people are going. Because I couldn't really tell where people were going at first. Like, okay, this many people are cutting the cable. Where are they going? Like, there wasn't a clear answer. Of course, Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that. But
there wasn't much outdoor content there, really.
No, there wasn't. There's starting to be a little bit now. But Waypoint is, all the time, on demand or on the connected TV space. You can watch it all the time. So that's where we're really focusing our efforts now is Waypoint. And of course, we're still on some Discovery Channel, or we're on the Discovery Channel. We're on Sportsman's Channel. So we're on some conventional channels. But Waypoint, we do better on Waypoint than anything else.
That's awesome.
More people are watching there.
Awesome.
But that's the short version.
Yeah, that was great, man. I was following along. So so well. So tell me, was it kind of all fly fishing at first when you were getting
All
started
fly
being
at first.
out
It was
west?
all fly at first out west, and even when I got to Key West, I probably didn't. I probably guided in Key West for 5 or 6 years without owning a spinning rod,
Really?
and yeah, and then it took about 5 or 6 years to get any kind of confidence to think that okay, maybe I'm ready to enter a tournament, and compete against all these other guys that I see at the dock and everything. And I thought very naively that you could go into one of these tournaments and compete with a fly rod, and I didn't know I didn't know much about tournament fishing back then, and some of the teams and particularly the guides and anglers that were in those tournaments are incredibly good with spinning rods, and you don't really stand much of a chance. I mean, it has been done. I think Tim Mahaffey won a red bone one time, all on fly, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of decided, well, if that's really something that I'm interested in, if I want to compete in these tournaments, which I did like fishing in the tournaments, I'm going to need to learn a bunch of new things. And honestly, that really probably extended my guide career quite a bit, because I was excited and I was learning all the time. And, I had just fly fished, a lot. But then we would just have extended periods of the year where we would do nothing but fly fish, in tarpon season or whatever. And, from February through July, there's no spin fishing. And then, you kind of spin fish for the rest of the year. But then later, as tournaments became more and more a bigger part of it, you need to practice with those anglers that you're going to fish with, and
Right.
you start spin fishing for all kinds of stuff. And so I like both. I mean, honestly, I look at both of them as a tool. I like fly fishing as much as anybody, and I love fly fishing, but I also love spin fishing and bait fishing and lure fishing, and I could fish with a cane pole, man. I just like fishing, and I want to try to be good at all of them, right? Bait, cast,
For sure.
spin, fly, and I look at them like golf clubs in a golf bag. Like that you can be really specialized with one, but it's not always good.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you don't always hit a 7-iron on everything. You could be the best in the world with a 7-iron, but
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're going to go win the Masters.
right. there's other things, and when you're fishing 300 days a year, you encounter a lot of weather that is not conducive to fly fishing, and if you can open your mind a little bit, you can still have a great day, and you can really. For me, it kept the learning going all the time learning, and that's what I get the most excited about.
I think that we're very similar in the way we got started. And for a long time, for me, it was just fly fishing as well. And it's not that I got bored with fly fishing, but once I started venturing into bait fishing more and spin fishing and different tactics, like you said, it's so much more exciting. Always being able to learn something, always being able to try something different. It's more to try to stay on top of, which as an angler, I think it just, like you said, it just makes you a better angler overall. And that's my end goal, is how can I become
Right.
a better angler?
For sure. I don't know that either is more exciting than the other, but what is more exciting is once you've been doing one of them for a long time and you open this door into this new area, and a lot of people do it the opposite way that we're talking about. They spin fish all their life,
Right.
and then they find fly fishing and they get totally into it because everything's new. They're learning how to tie flies, they're learning how to cast, they're learning all this new stuff. And it really, really reinvigorates them because they're now learning, and it's exciting again. It's a
Right.
challenge, and before it was kind of easy. Well, it was kind of the opposite for me. I was way into fly fishing, and then learned about spin fishing, and I was horrible at it at first. I mean, I had spin fish for bass and bluegills and stuff when I was a kid, but you're making these casts that plop into the water, and there's no accuracy, and like I don't know. It was a totally different deal when I learned how to do it, and then fished with some anglers that were really, 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 really good at it. I mean, and I was just like, wow, okay, I'm used to getting 50 shots on permit, and maybe we catch one, maybe. And this guy, if he gets 10 shots, he catches 10 fish.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
that got exciting for me, because I used to say, oh, I'd rather catch one on fly than 10 on bait. Well, honestly, I had never caught 10 on bait, and catching 10 on bait is really fun. It's pretty awesome. So
That's awesome.
I rethought everything, once I had fished with some really great anglers.
For sure, that's cool, man. I like that a lot, and it affirms me in my belief too of kind of the same theory. And I see it with clients a lot of times too. You know, you'll have a spin or a fly fishing client that's so against spin fishing. You got a windy day, it's cloudy, you know the redfish are there, but you can't get them to eat the fly, you can't see them, you can't get shots at them, and they won't pick up a spin rod. And I try to preach that, you know, you can learn, you can become a better angler all around with a spinning rod, like if you're willing to pick up the spinning rod on tough days. But I think, like you said it so beautifully, that they're all like a tool, they're all like a different golf club in your bag, and going
they
about
are,
that
man.
way.
But you know, honestly, it takes a long time to get there. Like, in order to be a good fly fisherman, you got to commit, and you got to go out there on the days where it's just easier to pick up a spinning rod. And if you just do that every time the wind blows, then you're never going to be very good.
That's very true.
So I mean, I get both sides of it. I get that you know, if you're trying to be good at fly fishing, then that's what you need to do. And then once you develop enough experience and enough kind of you know, I guess it's experience both with a spinning rod and a fly rod, then you can comfortably say, I think it'd be more fun to spin fish today, or I think it's going to be more fun to fly fish, or whatever. I'm getting ready for this tournament or whatever, so I really need to fly fish. But each person is going through their own fishing journey, you know,
right?
And you'll get to that point to where you're just like, man, it's fly or die, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe if they fish a little longer, then they realize, well, dying's not that much fun.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
that's very true. Well, tell me this, as far as going from guiding and the pressures of guiding every day and putting clients on fish, did that change much for you when you went into, you know, creating TV shows and whatnot? Was it more stressful? Was it less stressful? Like, how did that kind of work for you, that transition?
Well, I always saw guiding as an art form, really. I thought that, I mean, I put my heart and soul into it, and I took great pride in doing it. And it didn't matter if I had, you know, Fitz Coker, who is possibly the best fly fishing tarpon fisherman on the planet, or I had somebody that had never fished before. I was equally as nervous for both of them, and I was always nervous before charters, even if I had fished with a guy hundreds of times. I had clients that I fished with at the end of my guide career. Really, I was fishing 3 people 100 days at a time, and each time that those people showed up, I was just as nervous as the first time that they showed up. I wanted to show them a really good day, and I had you know, a plan out in my head, and you know, an A, B, C, D, E, F plan, and all these contingencies and everything, and I was just very nervous. Well, I don't know if it's nervous is the right thing. I was kind of, I just wanted to have a great day.
Yeah.
You got some butterflies in your stomach, and it feels the same way as it did for a high school wrestling match. Like, okay, here is what I've been working for. Well, when it came time for the TV show, or even tournaments were kind of the same way, but I still have somebody in the boat. And then when we fished the professional tournaments, on the professional redfish tournament, those were stressful because financially there was a lot riding on it. We would, I don't know, this was probably the worst idea I ever had, but we would have a full schedule of these world-class fly fishermen that had booked us a year in advance to fish tarpon season. And one year we just said, you know what, we're going to go do these redfish tournaments at the same time that's happening. So we're not going to be able to, I'm not going to book those days this year. And it hurt a lot of feelings, and it caused kind of problems, but I was sure that it was the right move in some way, shape, or form to leave, you know, paying tarpon customers and sleeping in my own bed, to going to Texas and trying to catch 2 fish that would win you $50,000 or whatever. I would have made more at home.
Right.
You know, and only one person is going to win, and we didn't win any of those tournaments in Texas. We never won. Not in Texas. So that was a terrible idea. But I got very nervous about those things because there was a tremendous financial weight on my shoulders there, because I was supporting a family. The only way that, I mean, I'm not a trust fund guy. The only way I had any money is showing up and pushing the boat around.
Right.
And so in order to do that, it was a huge risk. So that was I was very nervous for that. Then the TV show is a little bit different in that you have a lot riding on that, and you have now all of a sudden there's a lot of other people involved. We have 3 cameramen, we've got a chase boat, we've got an underwater guy, we've got a drone guy, we've got a still photographer, and some of those people are double duty. Like the still photographer is also the drone guy, and sometimes he drives the boat. But there's all of these other people, and that is tricky to go out there and do what we were doing on a regular guided trip, where you're worried about these spooky fish and all of that. And now you're taking another boat with you, and all these people hatches are slamming, and it's loud. And then you go up onto the fish, you're getting ready to make the cast. And one of your camera guys is like, "No, dude, you can't cast like that. You're right into the sun. I don't have a shot here." And you're like, "Man, the fish are not going to stay here." And they're like, "Yeah, I think they will." And you're like, "Oh, well, okay." And so you back off of that school of fish. And sure enough, man, I learned a lot like that, because if you're really patient and you move really, really, really slowly and you stay way away from the fish, you can get yourself in these situations where you can pole around a school of fish, and then now you're on the other side of the school of fish, and the camera guys have the sun at their back, and you're looking, into the sun, as opposed to the other way around. And we've done that before.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was possible, but you can. But as far as being nervous, there's just a lot more financial risk involved. I mean, if we don't get a show, it costs us a lot of money, and that it's a razor thin margin anyway. So the faster we can get a show and the better we can make it, the better off everybody.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there are nerves, but I don't know. After 17 years, you kind of just think, well, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to do what the weather allows for, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to give it my best. And other than that, there's not a lot we can do. I mean, we are dealing with wild animals and Mother Nature, and there's only so much you can make happen. So
for sure,
we're.
Sorry, what were you saying?
We're nervous about it sometimes.
We're nervous.
I mean, sometimes you're nervous about it, but I don't know.
It's always a good nervous.
There wasn't a big change between guiding and the TV, or guiding in the tournaments, because I took guiding very, very seriously. I mean, it didn't matter if I knew the person or not, didn't know them, or whether they were good or had never fished before. I took every trip very seriously.
Yeah, that's awesome. Someone I was talking to on a podcast, I can't remember exactly who it was recently, just put it really well, and what you just said reminded me of it. But they were saying that it's one of the few professions in the world where you can do everything right, but at the end of the day, you're still relying on a wild creature to cooperate the way you want them to get the end outcome that you're desiring.
Well, I mean, you can do that, but then you also have another element that's out of your control, is your angler skill level.
Yeah.
When you're trying to fly fish for permit, or fly fish for bonefish or giant tarpon, I mean, that's a big factor. There's a reason why the same, little pairs of a guide and angler win all the tournaments in the Florida Keys. It's because they're good, and the angler can do their job, and the guide is doing his job, and then together they're really good.
Yeah.
So when you have that magic combination, you catch a lot more fish. I mean, there's no question about it. And when you're fishing for somebody for the first time and they can cast 30 feet, I mean, you might catch one.
Yeah.
You hope you're going to catch one. You'll do everything you possibly can. Sometimes you use the boat to catch one.
Right.
Like, just leave it. You just start pulling your ass off away from the fly. And, maybe you can catch them like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are out of your control. And I think but there are a lot of things that you can make happen.
Yeah,
through hard work and not quitting and not giving up on your client. There's a lot of things that you can make happen too.
Definitely. I think that's a place you've got to fight. At least myself as a guide, sometimes is that struggle of, like, when you do have that client that you feel is going to be very difficult and the conditions are stacked against you. You've got that choice of, like, all right, I'm going to really get after it and try to make this happen, or you can kind of crumble into yourself and be like, just go through the motions and you're never going to catch them that way. You can make it feel like it's going to happen, but to really, I think that's what separates a good guide from not a not good guide, is one that even when everything's stacked against them, they're still going to get out there and do what they can to put their clients in the best situation to catch fish. So out of all three of those, the tournament fishing, the guiding, and the television show, is there one that you've enjoyed the most out of that career?
I think the guiding.
The guiding.
I mean, I really loved guiding, and um, I think I think guiding is the most. That's the best for sure, because guiding, you can put all this work into it. You're not running your plan by anybody else. You're operating, solely on what you know and what you're thinking, and you're weighing all these risks, and you're making these different runs, and when your guy catches fish, it's instant gratification.
Yeah.
And there's like a surge of adrenaline and dopamine there that, in the tournaments, you catch a big fish and you think it's going to be a winner, and you get to the scales and you're in 8th place. Yeah, it took hours for that to happen. Like with guiding, you're just happy, and you can see that your guy's happy, and or a family, you can see everybody's happy, everybody's having fun. They've already booked the day the next year before you even get back to the dock. I mean, I just love that. The TV show is very rewarding, and I do like it, and there's a whole creative thing about it, but there's a real delayed gratification there, because we might film a show. I mean, sometimes we'll film a show, like say in 2001, we filmed shows, and then we ended up with 2 extras. Well, those shows aren't going to hit the air for a year and a half, right? So I don't see that gratification.
Right.
Like by the time those hit the air, I've almost forgotten all about it, right? But there's a whole creative process, and sometimes there's a quick turnaround. Now with a podcast, there's a much quicker turnaround. Like I could set up a podcast and do it in 20 minutes, and then I could have that live in by tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's even got more kind of closer to instant gratification, that you just put out something that was really good. People are immediately giving you feedback on it. Yeah, that's good. The TV show's the longest delay, and guiding was probably the quickest. So probably in the order, guiding was my favorite. I really like the podcast, and then TV. It's different. The gratification is long term, rather than, there's no short term gratification in the TV.
Yeah. That's I haven't thought about it in that way, but that's really interesting.
I mean, even when you do something really cool, you go out, you make the incredible cast, and you're like, God, I hope they got that, and you catch this fish that seemed impossible. You don't know for months what that shot looked like.
Right.
Like you have it in your head what it looked like, and then you see it and you're like, oh.
It's a letdown. You've really created into this big
they
thing.
They didn't get it like I thought they did. And other times it's way better than you had ever hoped.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's kind of the order, I think, of how much I like them.
Do you ever find yourself wishing that you could go back to the simple early days of your fishing, where there wasn't all this around it? And you're way more into your career than I am. But I do find myself sometimes like, oh man, I wish there wasn't drones now, and all this. Drones is a big thing here, because it's used as a very annoying scouting tool in a lot of ways for our redfish, and Instagram and social media, which are all great things. But it's definitely created this double-edged sword of like, are we starting to hurt ourselves more than we're helping ourselves? Where do you kind of stand on that? Do you feel like maybe going back in time would help, or I guess that's kind of a question. We can't go back in time.
I think it's pointless to think about it. Yes, I think that might help. I think the world was probably better before social media in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways that maybe there's some things about it that are better.
Yeah.
Pre-internet was really cool, and post-internet is really cool in a lot of ways. I mean, there's plenty of downsides to both, and there's plenty of upsides to both. Your first question.
Yeah, I ask you multiple questions.
Do I ever kind of back up and wish that, all the cameras would go away and all of this? I do.
Yeah.
And what I do is I plan time for myself to fish, and I just did it. I was in BVI and just went bone fishing there, waiting by myself, no one else, and just waiting along, hoping I'll see a couple bonefish and catch one. And I don't have to catch a lot. I really don't. I don't, anymore. I don't have to catch a lot. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But just the experience of getting back to the way it was when I first
Yeah.
started. You got a little box the size of your wallet in your pocket with about 20 flies in there, and a spool of tippet in your pocket, and that's it. One fly rod, and you're just walking, and you might find something, you might not. That's, to me, that's amazing, and I've
Yeah.
done that recently in the BVI. Then I went to Exuma not too long ago. I did the same thing there. In that situation, I had both my boys with me, and that was really cool. But no cameras, no chase boats, nothing like that. And I like that. I really do. I like to do that because I like to remember what it was like. Um, when it's like that, you're wishing you had a boat, and you're wishing you had all this stuff. And then when you get all the stuff, you're wishing you could go back to that canoe, or you could go back to that John boat and do it with no cameras
Yeah.
and nobody else. So I don't know. You're always wishing for one or the other, but I
Yeah.
do like both. I like having all the stuff. I like having nice boats and all the gear, but I also like doing something like getting in a canoe with one rod and just going down a river and fishing. That's
Yeah.
that's the way it started for me, and that's super fun. And trout fishing could be like that. Like, I spend time trout fishing in the summer times, and I like to just go out there. Sometimes we use a drift boat, sometimes we just walk, and a lot of times I fish by myself and
Yeah.
just stay out there all day long and fish by myself. That's something I don't get to do that much anymore, but I do enjoy it very much.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about fishing is it can be so different for so many people, but equally as important and it's such a part of your life. Whether you're, you know, catching catfish, in a river somewhere in Missouri, or you're sight fishing for tarpon with a fly rod, and in the Keys. It's the same but so different to everybody, which is really really cool.
I like both,
Yeah,
all of them.
I was.
One thing I really haven't really done much of, and I don't even know that I want to, is ice fishing. Um, Maybe I might like ice fishing. I don't know. I mean, I like all kinds of fishing, so I'd
Yeah,
probably like it. But that's not the one that I'm gonna jump at.
right,
Like,
right.
I'd go catfishing in the Mississippi River before I decided I was gonna go ice fishing.
Right, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the cold, but just sitting there in that much cold would maybe get a little old for me. But I haven't done it, so I can't talk against it. But people seem to really like it. So, well, I wanted to touch a little bit about kind of what the issues that y'all have got going on there down there in Florida, and I figured you'd be a great resource for the people that like to listen to this podcast to kind of explain kind of the clean water issues that y'all are having down there. I know I've been seeing a bunch of stuff on Instagram about it lately. But can you kind of explain for people listening what is, and I'm sure you've done so much of this lately, but what exactly it is y'all are facing down there in South Florida as far as your water quality goes?
Sure. Well, at first, even for people that live in Florida, it's a pretty complicated, it's seemingly complicated issue, because you got a giant lake in the middle of the state, Lake Okeechobee,
Mm-hmm.
and around that you have sugar land and all kinds of other stuff, and then all down the rivers and all around you have development, you have people that are putting chemicals on their lawns and everything else. So you'll hear about the Everglades, and you'll hear about the water issues in Florida. And for somebody that doesn't know that much about it, and even when I was in the Keys, I'm like, well, wait a minute, you got tons of too much fresh water over here, and no fresh water down here, and I don't understand what's going on. Like, so what ends up happening is when you get a lot of rain and Lake Okeechobee fills up, they have to do something with that water, and that water goes out two rivers. One goes to the east coast, and one goes to the west coast, and there's no treatment of that water. So if you get that Lake Okeechobee water and it's got a lot of fertilizers and contaminants in that water, and that goes out both sides of the state at certain times of the year where it is warm, and that water hits the Gulf of Mexico primarily, and it hits that warm water. We do have algae blooms that are natural in the state of Florida, but then you have these, it's just like steroids. It's like you can get strong without steroids, but then if you add steroids to it, you can get really strong really fast,
Right.
right? So it's the same kind of thing. When you put a tremendous amount of water, an unnatural amount of water, out this river that goes out the Caloosahatchee River that goes into the Gulf, we have these unnaturally large algae blooms that are causing all kinds of issues. The fish will die. You have fish all up and down the beaches that are dead. It is stinky. It's nasty. The fishing is terrible in those areas until it clears out, and you're having these massive fish kills over and over and over again. The red tide gets worse than it's ever been, and it's an unnatural kind of thing. So it's unnatural because at the same time that they're doing all this to Lake Okeechobee, there was at some different times through history they have built dikes and dams and roads all through the Everglades and have really blocked the flow of water going south. So all of this excess water that would be in that is now being shot out both sides of the state used to flow in a laminar flow down south to the Everglades. And so you dike up all these places and you build roads through all here, and now you have stopped the flow of water south, right? So there's nothing else that you can do but put the excess water out these two very straight pipes out the side of Florida. So way too much fresh water. That fresh water naturally should flow south. Now it's being directed both sides of the state. So just the amount of fresh water is a problem. Right, that it's going into these estuary areas, and now they're too fresh to support the life that should be there. Meanwhile, in our areas, Rankin Bight and Snake Bight and all this stuff around the Everglades, the salinity is so high that it's also causing problems. Seagrass die-offs, all kinds of things. So it's really the reverse. All the fresh water is going out here instead of going south, and so there are a lot of different programs that have been earmarked to help with this. In other words, if they could somehow settle the water out before they send it down the Caloosahatchee River and treat it so that they get out a lot of these harmful chemicals and stuff like that, then send the water south or send the water out the Caloosahatchee River, then you wouldn't see as big of problems, or that's the hope anyway. So there were these reservoirs, EAA reservoirs, that were the money has already been earmarked for these reservoirs, and this is the big deal that just happened. They had all the money earmarked for these reservoirs. They had dates where they were starting to work on these reservoirs, and they were going to be these huge settling ponds, and it's not like we had to rewrite laws or anything, or get a law passed or do anything like that. This had already been done 30 years ago, that they had set up these EAA reservoirs, and the money was just not being spent on them. So what Captains for Clean Water has done is they've gone in and they said, look, a solution already exists, and one of the big problems is that people don't understand that a solution already exists, and the money has already been earmarked for this, and it's just been postponed over all of these years. And all we really need to do is get people to write their congressman, talk to their state senator, and tell them that we want these reservoirs built. Well, that was happening. And then just at the last minute here, this Senate Bill 2508 was introduced, and it was some pretty sneaky stuff to where somebody was saying, well, now we can redirect these funds to other areas. Well, it's because you have a group like Captains for Clean Water and many other groups, right? It's not just Captains. There's a lot of people that are doing great work on this, but it takes someone that is constantly watching these things and knows the ins and outs of politics to know that people at the last minute, in the 11th hour, they slip this stuff in and change everything. Yeah. Right? Like this, if this had gone unnoticed, it would have totally made all the work that Captains has done over the last 6 years. It would have just been for nothing. Yeah. And so they're watching these type things and know about them, and have people in Washington, watching for them. Yeah. And that's what it really takes, is some kind of leadership like that. Of course, you need some money for that, which Captains does. They do take donations, but right now, I mean, it's their leadership and just their dedication to making sure that people are doing what they say they're going to do, and that this kind of sneaky legislation doesn't slip in. Yeah. And luckily they did see that. So, the problem in Florida is not enough fresh water in certain areas, too much fresh water in other areas. It's kind of tricky to understand, but if we could get some more water being sent south towards Flamingo and in that area and restore kind of a little more natural flow, that would certainly help. If we could kind of settle out the water that's going out both sides of the state, that would certainly help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the problem in a nutshell. And the thing that I like to point out there, that Captains also likes to point out, is I don't really think it does any good to point the finger and of blame and scream and shout. I mean, I think that there are solutions, and those solutions have already been voted upon and earmarked, and all we got to do is get them to actually do them.
Yeah.
And that seems way more possible to me than saying, oh, the Everglades are all messed up and we need to, build 50 bridges where these roads have blocked the flow. Maybe. I doubt that's ever going to happen.
Right.
But anyway, I hope I
that was great.
Pretty easy to understand, because honestly it took me a while to fully understand what was going on, because I don't fish in those areas in north. I mean, I've been up there, but that's not my water, so I don't really know those areas like I know the Keys. And our problem is lack of fresh water, and their problem's too much fresh water. And for a while I was like, I don't know how all this is happening. Like, how do we have not enough here and too much up there? But I get it now.
Yeah, no, that's been explained better than it has ever before, and really helps me have a good understanding. So that's super good to hear. So since Captains and the other groups you're talking about caught that, does it look like those settling reservoirs and everything are something that they might be pushing to do now, or is back in the works?
So.
Okay.
I hope so. I mean, I think it became very evident. And listen, I'm no political mastermind. I don't know what goes on in I almost called it Hollywood. Sometimes it seems like Hollywood.
Hollywood.
I don't know what goes on in Washington necessarily. And quite honestly, I have zero interest in politics, other than I like to fish, and I want to make sure that my kids can see the Everglades like I've been able to see the Everglades, and the state of Florida has water issues, and I'll do whatever I can to try to preserve my own interests, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's how people get interested in politics, is something that you care about is not being represented or in danger of being destroyed or whatever. So, I mean, that's my angle here. I have no political angle other than
you want to protect the water.
Like to see them, protect the water. So, will the reservoirs be built? I mean, I hope so. But this last little Senate bill thing made it pretty obvious that that's a pretty good sum of money, that other people have ideas that would promote their careers and get them elected into future office and make them look really good to their constituents and stuff, if they could redirect that money towards probably good things, probably schools, probably roads, probably stuff that we would also enjoy.
Right.
But it's there for this water project, and hopefully it's going to stay there. And if it does stay there and people do what they say, I do believe that the reservoirs will be built, and I believe that they'll be effective and will result in a better Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, just being out, you see something like a hurricane come through your area, or I don't know, you could have a sewage spill, you could have anything.
Right.
If you just beat Mother Nature down, you can beat her into submission. But if you just back off a little bit and give her a chance, man, just back off a little and let some of that fresh water come in there, and just let it breathe a little bit, man, she'll come back.
Yeah.
I really believe that she will, and it doesn't take that much. But when you just beat her down over and over and over again, I mean, I think there's only so much that can be taken.
Yeah, I agree.
Before it's permanent damage. But I don't think that we're there yet. I really don't. I don't think that we're at the permanent damage state. I think that there's still lots of hope, and that's why I like Captains for that. They're full of hope, and they're full of positivity.
Yeah.
And there's some other groups out there that point the finger, and I've never supported them, and maybe they're very effective too, but that's just not what I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how you solve a problem.
No, I agree. I think that's been what we've seen a lot with our issues up here. I'm not going to get into all that, but it's just it should be all about how can we join together to fix this? How can we all make this better for everyone in any of those situations? We'll tell before we get or finish up with this. I'd love for you to be able to share a little about your podcast for people that might not have listened to it. I'm sure most have, sure. But when did you start your podcast, and share a little bit about kind of your goal with your podcast and your episodes?
I think today we released episode number 575. So I think I've been doing it for 3 years, maybe 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while. I started out and I just decided I was going to do one a week for a year and just try that. And what my idea of the podcast is I really wanted to. There were certain people that I really wanted to hear their story, especially the icons in the sport and people that I really looked up to and admired that may not be as well known. And I've been able to do that, man. I've been able to go and interview Bill Dance and Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston of the bass world, and like Robert Trossitz of the saltwater world, guys that have 238 world records and wow. Just have lived these amazing lives, and and then also be able to like talk to the new generation, like the Richard Blacks of the Florida Keys, and really anybody that is doing anything cool outdoors. And so people seem to like it, and then I was able to kind of expand out beyond just fishing into things that are interesting. Like I like the idea that people can make stuff happen in their life, like something that they find interesting or they're passionate about, that they can make something happen. They can make a career out of that.
Yeah.
Like you take somebody like Jessica Mills. She has a YouTube channel called Homemade Wanderlust, and she had a job, and she just quit her job and decided she was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. She had never been camping before, and then she hikes the Appalachian Trail, does a little YouTube channel about it. It's pretty popular. Then she does the Continental Divide Trail, then she does the Pacific Crest Trail, and she's a Triple Crowner. She does all this other stuff, and she has managed to make herself a professional backpacker.
That's
which
awesome.
I just find fascinating. I just find her story fascinating, and I like the parallels, because a lot of people that listen to my podcast, they want to know, like, how do I quit my job and start this tackle shop that I want to do, or how do I quit this job and become a fishing guide, or whatever, a personal trainer, whatever it is that they want to do. And it's these stories of how other people have done it in whatever line of work. A lot of times it's fishing, sometimes it's hunting, but it's usually associated with the outdoors, and somebody does something that honestly was pretty difficult. It kind of went against all the odds. Those are the stories that I like the most, and I love to find those stories and just tell them.
Yeah.
So I produce 3 a week. There's a How-To Tuesday. There's a full length, which is like the conversation we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things that's been really important to me is as a fishing guide is my physical body. And being a fishing guide is a very physical thing, especially in the Florida Keys where you're on a boat all day. And I just found that the better shape I was in, the more days I could go in a row, and the better I could support my family. So being in good shape and taking care of your body, especially as I'm aging now. I'm 53, and I've learned a lot of things that I share with the audience about how you can take care of your body, and I'm training to fish when I'm 90.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, and so that's what the Friday, the Physical Friday thing is all about, is being able to keep your body in good enough shape that you can continue to do the things that you love outside and do it with the people that you love. So that's what it's all about.
That's awesome, man. That's an inspiration for me with this podcast, and it's cool to see what you've done with it and how it doesn't have to take necessarily, like, you don't have to be just a fishing podcast or just like a talk about tackle podcast. You can, I think sharing the stories is what's important and what people really like at the end of the day. So, well, thank you so much, man. Is there anything else that I missed that you want to touch on before we end this podcast?
No, not really. I mean, people can go and check out all our stuff. Saltwater Experience, we got 130 150 episodes on Waypoint. I think you can go to waypointtv.com and you can learn how to watch that. You can watch it right on the website, or you can get the app, or you can watch it on connected TVs like Vizio or Samsung Plus, all kinds of things. There's a whole page on there that you can learn how to watch it any which way you want. And that's really our big thing, saltwater experience in the podcast.
Yeah.
And then we have the other shows, the Into the Blue and Sweetwater, and they all have websites and social media, so you can find them there. And love to see anybody that comes over there and start a conversation or have new listeners for the podcast. That'd be awesome.
Definitely. And I will link all of that stuff in the show notes of this podcast, as well as over on YouTube. And I'll get those links from you after the show. But man, yeah, definitely go check out all their stuff. Just incredible TV shows, incredible podcasts, and just a great place for outdoor and fishing content. Tom, man, thank you so much for coming on here.
Hey, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to do another one sometime in the future.
Sure.
These are the kind of shows I really like. I feel like just a good story, good conversation, and really enjoyed having you on here. So I do appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, thanks for checking out another episode, and we will see y'all next week. Later.